Hello everyone. So today we are going to discuss a very important aspect of shipping, and that is in fact, even when we talk about the pillars of IMO, this comes in, it is one of the name. And there are few questions that are asked because it is pertaining to individuals wellness, individual health, that is MLC. But before going to MLC, that is Maritime Labour Convention, we will have a look at the ILO. Yeah, definitely the question will not be asked from about ILO, but since it is a body of, it was formed by, uh, this convention was brought up by ILO, so we need to discuss a little bit about ILO, and then we are going to jump on to the convention, that is MLC. It was created in 1919 as part of the tripartite organization. So this tripartite, it is now, when you look at the structure of United Nations, then there you find different wings and different assemblies, different organizations, different bodies that are working under UN, where IMO is one of the part of it. So, but when you the only organization which is a tripartite, because others are not tripartite, where all the three stakeholders are involved, that is representative from the government, we have employers and workers in its executive bodies. So all these three forms together, that is tripartite. It was formed even before the formation of this United Nations. That was at the end of the World War One. Okay, its headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland. 187 members, almost everyone are their member, to set labor standards, develop policies, and devise programs promoting decent work for all women and men. Okay, now we come to our International Maritime Labour Convention. So sometimes you may have a question that may pop up, and they may ask you about, give a brief idea about MLC. So when they ask about, then you can tell them the full form to the surveyor, that International Maritime Labour Convention. So see, the idea for here class is that we are focusing only to the point that what surveyor can ask. We are not going in depth of anything. That is the core idea. So please keep this in mind. So it was adopted in 94th Maritime Session of the International Labour Conference, and then convention consolidated nearly all earlier ILO standards for seafarers into a single convention. The MLC 2006 entered into force on, so from 2013 it is in force, that is 20th August 2013. And then continuation to that, you can tell them the chapter's name. Okay, so you can give them a brief idea about the full form when it came in force. Okay, so it comes under ILO and how it came into existence, all these things you can tell. Full form with the year, that is mandatory. So here they may ask you chapter, but here they mention is title. There are 5 titles, and there can be a different separate questions altogether mentioning that, name the chapters of MLC. So this that can be a separate question as well. So we are covering basically 2 questions today. The one is about the MLC and the other chapters of the MLC, and then we'll go at the key points of all the chapters altogether. The title one, when we talk about, that is chapter 1, that is minimum requirement for seafarers to work on ship. And then when you go for regulation 1.1, that is minimum age, we'll discuss in depth in the actual folder itself. Then we talk about regulation, that is 1.2, that is medical certificate. And then we go on, we see regulation 1.3, where we are more focused about training and qualifications. And then we have recruitment and placement. And then when we go to chapter 2, that talks about conditions of employment. And subsequent regulations are seafarers employment agreement, wages, hours of work and hours of rest, entitlement to leave, repatriation, seafarer compensation for ship's loss or foundering, manning levels, career and skill development opportunities for seafarers, employment, and then we go on for accommodation, recreational facilities, food and catering. That was chapter 3. And then we talk about chapter 4, that is health, Health protection, medical care, welfare and social security, where we have medical care on board ship and ashore, ship owners liability, uh, health and safety protection and accidents, access to shore based welfare facilities, social security. Then we have the last one, that is compliance and enforcement. Obviously when we talk about compliance, all those bodies will come into existence, that is flag state responsibilities, general principle, authorization of recognized organization. And then we have maritime labor certificate and declaration of maritime labor compliance, inspection and enforcement, onboard compliant procedures, marine casualties, port state responsibilities, inspection in port, onshore, seafarers compliant handling, and then we have labor supplying responsibilities. And then we switch over to the chapters. When you talk about the first chapter, there you find that minimum age, that is the requirement. So age cannot be below 16 years, so that is the criteria or the standard that is set. And the higher age can be set by the government or the contracting government or the local government, wherever the whosoever the ship is flying the flag of. And then when we go about and talk on the subsequent clause of it, so here you see the employment, engagement or work on board ship of any person under the age of 16 shall be prohibited. और जो फिर then they talk about below the age of 18 means 16 years, 17 years, and as well, they are not allowed for night watch, night work. Okay, and this night work shall be defined that it shall be of a minimum 9 hours. And then when we go and talk about, then it says that it cannot start beyond midnight and it cannot end early 5 a.m. And there may be an exceptions to this when the situation may be that training requirement, because that effective training requirement concerned that requires the night order, then there can be an exception. So these talks about exceptions. So what you need to remember here is the age shall be minimum 16, and then below the 18 that night book is not, night watch or night work is not allowed. And then we have 9 hours of on stretch that we talk about the rest hours. And then we have this, the night hours extends shall be from midnight and then not earlier to 5 a.m. in the morning. And then we were talking about the exceptions. The employment, engagement or work seafarers under the age of 18 shall be prohibited where the work is likely to jeopardize their health or safety. Now, under the age of 18 shall strictly be prohibited if it is concerned to the health and safety. So no work shall be done. So this is also an exception. When regulating work and living condition, members should give special attention to the young persons. Okay, we need to give special attention to the young persons who are there available or not. Okay, now when we talk about the further the regulation 1.2, that is medical certificate. Seafarers shall not work on a ship unless they are certified. Then you are aware of it that we are going on ship where we are medically finding ourselves certified, and it has to be certified from a medical practitioner, and it has to in accordance with STCW standards for training, certification and watchkeeping, duly practiced. And these certificates must be valid for 2 years. Okay, if we are talking about persons below 18 years, then it is valid for 1 year. And the examination color blindness is the examination for color blindness, that is valid for 6 years. There they are talking about each. Okay, so practitioner should be competent enough, so that we are not going to cater to it anyway. See here, a certification of color vision shall be valid maximum period of 6 years. So again, but again after 2 years we are doing it again and again. Okay, now when we talk about this one, the duties, see here, minimum age we have already discussed. Now medical certificates we also discussed, and then we go for the regulation 1.3, that is training and qualification. purpose to ensure that seafarers are trained and qualified to carry out their duties. Seafarers shall not work on a ship unless they are trained or certified, to competent, otherwise qualified to perform their duties. So that training that you are going, that BTech ME or BTech DNS, so all these trainings are a part and the requirement for that. Okay, now we go on for recruitment and placement. So all these RPSL numbers that you're seeing with the companies, they have so all shift access to an efficient, adequate and accountable system for finding employment on board ship without charge of the seafarers. That service charges that you're talking about, that is just that is not legal. Each member shall require in respect of seafarers who work on ship that flights flag that ship owners who use seafarers recruitment and placement services that are based in countries and territories in which, so you find that a company may be of Hong Kong or company may be of Denmark or some other country, but they have a agency, that is RPSL agency, that is there in Mumbai or somewhere in India. Okay, so that is basically what they are okay talking about here. Then we go on, we cater to nothing, there is nothing as such important to cater to you. Okay, then we go about recruitment and placement, and then they again in continuation the organizational and operational guidelines. Okay, so these things will just skip. Okay, and see, maintaining with due regards to the right of privacy and need to protect confidentiality, full and complete record of seafarers covered by the recruitment and placement system, which should include but not to be limited to the seafarers qualification, record of employment, personal date relevant to employment and medical data relevant to employment, maintaining up to date its list of ships for which the seafarers recruitment and placement services provide seafarers, and ensuring all these recruitment, you go to your master checker, you find there all these have been already they put in for you, that you have sailed on so and so ships for so and so period of time for so and so GRT of the vessel. Now we move on to the conditions of employment, that is title 2, that is chapter 2. So when we talk about seafarers employment agreement, the term and condition for employment for a seafarer shall be set out or referred to in clear written legally information. So all these forms, that a number of forms that you are signing, that is basically part of this all these things, MLC standards. So we have agreement, then you have ITF agreement. Some in some other class we can discuss these ITF agreement and types of agreement or contract that we are signing. Okay, here you see they are talking about where a collective bargaining agreement forms all or part of a seafarer's employment agreement. Okay, a copy of that agreement shall be available on board. So your agreement copy is available on board ship as well. Then we talk about a copy of standards form of agreement and the portion of collective bargaining that is subject to port inspection. So anytime a port inspection is there, they can uh, go through your agreement, and they may ask even also whether you are paid or not. Each member shall adopt laws and regulations specifying the matters that are to be included in all seafarers employment agreement governed by its national law. Seafarers employment agreement shall in all cases contain the following particulars: the seafarer's full name that you see here, date of birth, age, birthplace, ship owner's name and address, the place wherein date and seafarer's employment agreement entered into, the capacity in which the seafarer is to be employed, your rank, I mean, the amount to be paid, annual leave and all these things, wages, the termination of the agreement when they can terminate it, the health and social security protection benefit, the seafarer's entitlement to repatriation, you are to be repatriated from, in fact, from your home, you get paid for the flight, reference to a collective bargaining agreement if applicable, any other particulars which national law may require. Each member, when you talk about, then we move on to the wages. Okay, so they say that they have to be sufficiently paid and all, but you know the situation. I won't talk much on this. that all seafarers shall be paid for their work regularly and in full in accordance with their employment agreement. Okay, so all these things are there. Each member shall require the ship owners take measures such as those set out in paragraph 4 in standard. So measures to ensure that seafarers are able to transit their earning to their families include a system of enabling seafarer at the time of their entering employment or during it. Allot a desire. Any charge for the service under paragraph 3 and 4 of the standard shall be reasonable in amount, and the rate of currency exchange, unless otherwise provided, shall in accordance with the national laws or regulation, be it the prevailing market. Okay, so all these things are there. So able seafarers, your basic pay should be how much, your consolidated wages should be how much, and hours of work means that time during which seafarers are required to do work on account of the ship. Okay, overtime means time, so they have defined here. So how you calculate your wages. Okay, so these things are calculated. So here one thing is very important but should not, see here, for the purpose of calculating overtime, the number of normal hours per week covered by the basic pay or wages should be prescribed by national law or regulations, if not determined by collective agreement, but should not exceed 48 hours per week. So this is a figure that you should remember. Okay, then we go on for the everywhere, the most of the cases they are discussing what if flag state means the country for which the individual is flying the flag of. Hours of work and hours of rest, each member shall ensure that the hours of work or hours of rest for seafarers are regulated. Okay, it has to be regulated. That's why you're supposed to fill every day your rest hours without prejudice the principle of free collective bargaining agreement. Each member should, after consulting representative ship owners, they are supposed to do this. Okay, minimum monthly basic pay or wages figure for able seafarers. Then we have hours of work and hours of rest. Okay, so there you have talked about hours of work means that the time during the seafarer is required to do a work. Okay, hours of rest when you talk about, okay, when you are supposed to take rest. So there we come, and which is very important is this, that maximum hours of work shall not exceed 14 hours in any 24-hour period. Okay, first of all, the one thing I would like to remind you here is the latest amendment that happened was in 2018, which came in force in 2020. So I'm covering the amendments till 2020. Not in fact the amendment, but it came in force. So 14 hours in any 24-hour period and 72 hours in any 7-day period. Minimum hours of rest shall not be less than 10 hours. So this talk about maximum and this talks about minimum. So obviously the minimum conditions will be followed. Hours of rest may be divided into no more than two periods. Two periods, you cannot be more. Okay, one of which shall be at least 6 hours in length, and the interval between consecutive period of rest shall not exceed 14 hours. Musters, firefighting and lifeboat drills and prescribed by national law, all these things you must be seeing there everywhere. Muster stations are there. Sorry, the indication of your emergency duties, wherever muster list is there in your mess, galley, bridge, engine room, alleyway, and all these places. Okay, so we'll just skip this part, and when we talk about young seafarers at sea and in port, the following provisions should apply to all young seafarers under the age of 18. So basically we hardly see people who are employed below the age of 18, but still working hours should not exceed 8 hours per day and 40 hours per week, and overtime should not be worked only where unavoidable for safety reasons. So in case of a crisis there is always an exception. Okay, there is always an exception to the rule, so that you should keep in mind. Okay, all these things are there. Now we are taking about entitlement of leave, that the repatriation and your amusement and all these things, you are supposed to go on shore leave. Each member shall require that the seafarers employed on ships that fly its flag are given paid annual leave under appropriate condition. Okay, so you talk about this one, paid leave. We are not going in depth of all those things. It is not as such, you know all these things, but it is not exam point of view, it is not so much important for us. Now we talk about repatriation. You are supposed to be repatriated, okay, by ship owners, by the seafarers, for justified reasons. Whenever you are terminated, then the justification has to be submitted, why such termination happened, the maximum duration of service period on board following which a seafarer is entitled to repatriation, such period to be less than 12 months. Okay, so you cannot be on ship more than 12 months. Okay, national laws on all these things, you can arrest the ship on these accounts. Financial security is also important, your financial security for your dependents as well. Okay, so all these play here a major role in chapter 2 that we are discussing, that title 2 that we were discussing. Okay, I'm just browsing it so that you get a rough idea of what is actually the MLC, that the code that we are talking about, the convention that we are talking about. I have made a separate video for the difference between a code and a convention. So if you have not watched it, please do watch that video. Okay, so we have here seafarers compensation for ship's loss or foundering. So if when you have a loss, then you have to be paid your compensation. So what are those criteria, what are manning levels that they are talking about? And then we go for dispute settlement, career and skill development. So there are courses that we are doing it on board, so this comes in part of it. Each member shall have national policies that encourage career and skill development and employment opportunities for seafarers in order to provide the maritime sector with a stable and competent workforce. So, but you know the reality, the harsh reality. Register for seafarers. Where registers or lists govern the employment of seafarer, these register work, okay, it has to be maintained. Now when we talk about title 3, that is accommodation, recreational facilities, food and catering, that they are discussing about how should your accommodation be, okay, of how much space, and it has to be strictly written what all meet minimum standard must be followed. Okay, it need to have the size of the room and the accommodation space, heating, ventilation, noise and vibration and other ambient factors, sanitary facilities, lighting and hospital accommodation. So all these things are being discussed over here in this aspect. So when you see about in single berth seafarer sleeping rooms, the floor area shall not be less than 4.5 square meters in ships of less than 3000 gross tonnage, the 5.5 square meter in ships of 3000 gross tonnage or over but less than 10,000 gross tonnage, 7 square meters in ships of 10,000 gross tonnage or more. So all these things they have talked about. Okay, and we have different criteria for passenger ships, so we are not focusing here about the passenger ships. Okay, now we'll just skip these things, we'll move on to the other title, that is title 4, heating, lighting, sleeping room, how it has to be there, what sort of mattresses has to be used, how the mess room should be, officer mess room, hospital accommodation, sanitary accommodation. So all these criteria, what are the other facilities, bedding and all these things are there. So what all electronic gadgets should be there, and what all. Now when we talk about food and catering, that is regulation 3.2 in itself. So earlier we were discussing about hospital accommodation and all the sleeping area. Now they are talking about the food, what quality of food and what all nutritional value and how much is the food and at what time, and all these things is being discussed, so you all are aware about all these things. Now when we talk about Title 4, that is health protection, medical care, welfare and social security protection. So basically you see from starting only you must be getting a sense, it sounds so good. And this is just for our, see here, ships carrying 100 or more persons and ordinarily engaged on international voyage of more than 3 days duration shall carry a qualified medical doctor. So this is the requirement. Okay, as per MLC, but you know. So when we talk about and go and see, it must be sounding that it is for us, it is for our benefit. So what we want is, what are ship owners' liability? The regulation does not affect any other legal remedies that a seafarers may seek. This regulation will not. So it's just like it's a suggestion. It's not maybe a compulsion thing. Okay, wherever there is there, every time they just share their burden, share their shoulder to saying that it as per the national law requirement, health and safety protection and accident prevention. So all these things, in case of an accident, in case of the loss, what has to be done? Okay, so all these things have health and how, what all protection, and where you are taking yellow fever vaccination, you have OPV if you are going to African countries, uh, some of African countries, not all. So there you are supposed to get OPV, oral polio vaccine. You must have taken polio vaccine in your childhood days, but they are prone to polio, these African countries. So now also you can have. So they insert something in your nasal passage, and that is valid for only uh, I guess 1 year. Okay, you have, even if you're working in offshore industry, so there you have cholera vaccine. So that is so all these things, vaccines you are taking now. One that in the list, one more thing gets added is about what? It is about the our very favorite COVID-19 vaccine. Okay, so you are carrying that certificate also, certificate number as well. And then in future maybe whether you have taken the booster dose or not. Okay, for that also things may, we may have different certificate and different certificate number for maybe protection against that Omicron new variant of coronavirus. Compliance and enforcement, so these, there they are talking about the bodies which are supposed to do these compliance and license. Thank you so much. Thank you for your valuable time. My idea was not to make it so lengthy and elaborate. My just idea was to make you go through that MLC code and the booklet itself. So here two questions are more prominent. One is about, tell us something about MLC. So you just give a brief idea about ILO. Then you come to the MLC aspect. Then you again say that when it was established and how it is linked to ILO, what are standards of why it was being established. It's a tripartite agreement that you talk about why it is tripartite. All the three stakeholders are involved. No other UN body is tripartite. Then you talk about the chapters. So you can have a separate question altogether, name all the chapters, and there they may say you something about, even if they want, they may go in deep and they may ask you about your minimum uh, work hour or rest hours and all these things, so you can remember those figures. Thank you so much. Thank you for your valuable time and patience listening. Have a wonderful time and wish you all the very best for your future endeavors. May you all succeed in your life. If you have some suggestions, you have some feedbacks, you want some topics to be covered, please do share us your feedback. Thank you.